So excited to be chatting with Morgan today and with all of you. You know, we again, like we try to do these Facebook Lives once a week because I feel like it's just a great way to connect with everyone and, you know, to chat, to talk about certain topics that are coming up. Imposter syndrome and confidence has been coming up a lot here at Work Bigger. I've been seeing it in the community as we've been hosting workshops. It's such a important topic, and I think something that we all struggle with, especially as women. So really, really excited to dig deeper into this topic. If you're watching live, just give us a like, say hello, let us know where you're calling from. Again, we love for these calls to be super interactive, and we just love when you guys can join live and when we can talk through everything with you. So definitely say hi. We're calling in from Zoom, but you know, I'm going to be checking in. Hi, Leah. Yay. So glad you could join. Yeah. So leave a comment, tell us where you're calling from. And with that, I would love for Morgan, for you to introduce yourself and to tell us where you're calling from, because you're traveling right now, and you know,
Yeah.
Morgan like found a co-working space to take this call. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Morgan. I live in Dallas, Texas right now, but I took a spontaneous trip with my friend we flew into LA this morning, and I literally got to Santa Monica like 20 minutes ago, and we're driving up to Yosemite for like a whole weekend of camping and hiking, and we were mostly just like, in Dallas, it's going to be 108 degrees, and that sounds insane. So we are going to go up and experience some 60-degree weather. So yeah,
Awesome.
Found a co-working space, and we have some nice artwork behind me. So I'm excited about that.
I love it. I love it. So just to give a little bit more background on why we're interviewing Morgan, Morgan just graduated from the Work Bigger program, and I've known Morgan for a few months now. So she came to the community because of Magali, who's another Work Bigger program graduate. And it has been just amazing getting to know you, Morgan, your approach to life and work, and the transformation that I've seen you experience just in these short few months that I've known you is so inspiring to me. And I feel like every single time that we speak, you share something that for me resonates on such a deep level. So that clarity that I see in you, I really wanted to do this call so that you could share it with everyone else in the group, because we can all benefit from that perspective. So, you know, we did the interview on the blog, and if you didn't yet read it, I highly recommend that you do, because we'll talk a little bit more about the burnout that Morgan went through and how she overcame that and what she's doing now. But before we even start that, when Morgan and I jumped to do our little tech test earlier today, she pulled out this book and read this amazing passage or a quote on possibility, which is another thing that is coming up a lot at Work Bigger. So do you want to read that to us, Morgan?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you so much and you said that you get something every time you talk to me. Like, I feel the same with you. So
Yay.
I am so happy to have found Work Bigger. But so I was on the plane this morning, and I was reading this book called Being of Power by Baron Baptiste. I know it's probably backwards for y'all, but I was reading, and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I've been like needing to hear lately. And so it's talking about getting comfortable with not knowing something. And a lot of times I feel like we spend time in this space of like, what is the right answer? And sometimes it's okay not to know, like, one, the right answer, and two, the answer that is true to you. And sometimes it takes time to figure that out. And so he goes into saying, we start to get comfortable with not knowing when we remove the idea that there's something wrong with it. We rush to get to conclusions because we're programmed to view uncertainty as a problem. Yet an artist doesn't view a blank canvas as a crisis. She sees limitless creative possibility in it. Raw possibility is something we can feel. It's actually kind of cool when we can experience it in that way rather than it being something to panic about. Huge opportunities are lost when we rush to fill in this fertile, empty space. We can be so quick to get practical right away that we create limitations on what we might discover if we ask instead what is possible. And yeah, a lot of times I find that I spend time trying to figure out, like, what is the right answer? How do I do this? What's the first step to doing it? Rather than just being like, okay, world, universe, God, like, what is possible? What can I do with this amazing opportunity of open space? So, yeah.
Thank you. I know Leah's watching. Lydia, hi. Stephanie's on as well. Hi, guys.
Hi.
You know, I love the comparison, or I love when you talked about artists and how artists view that blank canvas as a possibility, and how we don't really approach that same space that way. And I shared a little bit with Morgan too that I'm in this place right now. That's why that resonated with me, where I've been talking about this a lot, how I feel like I'm living with two sides of myself. There's a side of me that feels like super confident, and the other side of me is like completely panicking at the uncertainty, and because it feels so uncomfortable, and we're not really taught that that's okay. We're not taught to sit with that open space. Yesterday, the topic of boredom came up, and I think that that's another thing that we've lost as a society. Like, we're so uncomfortable being bored because we constantly have to fill our day with stuff. But you know, I think moving through that is so powerful and important. And I'm wondering what's coming up for you guys watching as you think about the discomfort that that open space creates, and how we can all sit with that a little bit more to create better opportunities for ourselves. So think about that, and then share with us in the comments what comes up for you, because I just feel like that's really powerful and something that we can all do more of.
Yes. And you saying that brings up for me the idea of, in yoga. Well, okay, so I have recently gotten into yoga in the past like 8 months, and I did a program for 40 days of yoga straight, and that honestly was life-changing for me. One of the main things that I learned in that was the sitting in discomfort. There's a position called pigeon, which is a hip opener, that is like so uncomfortable for me. And at least when I first started it, it was. And I just was like, anytime I was in pigeon, I would just be thinking in my head, like, okay, instructor, like, let's get out of this now. It's been long enough. And I would like look at them and then feel angry towards them and like shoot them mean looks and be like, okay, time to get out of pigeon. But one of the main things that they teach is to sit into your discomfort and to breathe into it, and to and see what kind of possibilities that opens up for you. Because a lot of times when you sit and lean into discomfort, you come through it and you find out more about yourself than you would have if you hadn't stayed. You find that you can stretch further than you thought you could, or you find that you have grown more mentally, emotionally, spiritually than you would have otherwise.
Leah says this convo is already hitting home. And I feel like, Leah, I remember you mentioning the pigeon position too in yoga. For me, I've been doing a lot of meditation lately, and I feel like that's when I get really uncomfortable, because I'm like, when is this over? How long do I have to sit here? And then the other day I actually had a breakthrough. I was like, I think this is the point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Meditation is like one of the tools that I've noticed has made it such a big difference in my life. And how I had to change my mindset on meditation, where at first I was like, well, I'm bad at meditating because my mind wanders and I can't focus, and I can't just focus on my breath. But I use the app called Headspace, and one of the things I learned through that was that it's kind of like lifting weights at the gym. Like, you go and you say you want to build biceps. So you go and you do some bicep curls, and you do repetitions. And so to build your muscle, you do repetitions. And for meditation, the repetition is the coming back after your mind wanders. And so that the change in that mindset, so it's like, okay, my mind is wandering, I note it, and then bring it back to the breath, or whatever your mantra is, or whatever you're focusing on. And so that made meditation a lot more fun for me, because I was like, okay, yeah, my mind's wandering, but I'm still doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it made it
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I love it. I want to switch directions a little bit because I feel
Okay.
like we just jumped into your growth, which I love.
Okay.
So let's rewind, maybe talk about how you got here and like share in the blog. We talked a little bit about this, a very challenging period when you were working for a big four accounting firm and you
Yeah.
were burning out. So let's talk about that a little bit because I'm really curious, to share with the community like what that was like for you. And
Hmm.
then I want to talk about how you transitioned out of that and like all the amazing work you're doing now.
Okay. Yeah. So I went to college in San Antonio, Texas. I had moved from Virginia, which is where I grew up, and um, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in school. I started out in psychology, and then I went into marketing, and then I went into finance, and then finally I went into accounting. And accounting is kind of where I ended up, mostly out of the fact that I could get a job immediately and not have to like worry or wonder or have that uncertainty of having a job. Um, so I got a job in accounting, and I moved to Houston, and I started at a big four accounting firm, which is a great thing to have on your resume. But and I don't, if you know anything about big four accounting firms, they have the reputation of burning out, like causing people to burn out really quickly. And so I burnt out pretty quickly. I was on a brand new client, and so we were working like crazy hours, like 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. Like I would get home at 3 a.m. and then go back to work at like, um, 8:30 a.m. And at work it was like stressful, and it was like, why isn't this tied out, and why isn't this number agreeing here? And just felt a lot of pressure, especially since my life I've kind of um, like I go for the A's, I go for the good grades, I go for like the approval or the note of others that I'm doing okay. And so going through the experience of Big Four was really challenging, but I think also something that kind of needed to happen. Like I needed to go through that to come out on the other side and be like, okay, so that not quite for me. When I was going through it, I'd spend all my time at work, and then when I wasn't working, I would either go work out or eat or go party or sleep. And those are like the only things that I did. And I went out fairly frequently, and most of my friends all went out, like to bars and clubs and whatnot. Um, and I just felt like a little bit empty, because I wasn't taking any time to fill my own cup up again. When they talk about like putting on your airplane mask before putting on your child's airplane mask, like I was not putting on my airplane mask at all. But so after, like, it was, I think, one of the last days of busy season 2 years ago, I was like driving to work and crying like to my mom on the phone and like bawling, couldn't even see where I was driving really. Totally dangerous. But I was just like, how do people do this? And there are some people who thrive in that world, and that is awesome. But it wasn't where I thrived, and it wasn't where I felt full of life. So at that point, I was like, okay, once this slows down for a second, I need to look for a new job. Um, and that actually involved looking in other cities. And so I ended up looking in Dallas, and I found this accounting job at a private equity firm, which is where I'm currently at. And like accounting is not necessarily my passion, but it is super useful and very practical. And at the place where I work now, there are a lot of opportunities for growth, for learning, for teamwork, and there are just a lot of really good things about the company that I'm at. So yeah, anyway, so I moved to Dallas, got a new job, and I feel like a change of environment really helped with, I don't know, I guess it just helped with me giving myself permission to do new things because I didn't really know anyone in the city. And so I had to create my own like reality, I guess.
Mhm.
But so I decided that I was going to run a marathon. And so I ran my first marathon last year. And that was after signing up for I've signed up for a marathon almost every year for the past 6 years. And it took me until just now, back in December, to run my first one.
So you would sign up, but then not run. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
what was different this time?
yeah, this time my goal was to show up on marathon day with the intention of running a marathon. So my goal wasn't to finish the marathon. My goal was to just show up. I was
Did you train for it?
oh, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually I got a schedule down, and my friend, she was kind of my accountability partner. She would ask me how my training's going, and I'd be like, oh, I missed it Saturday, so I have to go Sunday. And I think that the goal though of showing up was what made the difference, rather than it being I need to get this time in the marathon, or I would have considered it a win if I had showed up on marathon day and then gone home. Maybe not a
Because,
win, but
well, was it because the goal felt more accessible? It wasn't
yeah,
this massive pressure you were putting on yourself.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Did you train the previous years that you had signed up?
I had always started to train, and so training for a marathon, they usually recommend 4 to 6 months for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started training 4 months before the marathon,
Mm-hmm.
which I run pretty often, so that I think was fine. But um, yeah, it was just, I think the goal seemed more realistic to me.
Yeah. And then I know that is not the only thing that you've been doing.
Yeah.
So maybe share a little bit about what accomplishing that goal, making that goal accessible to you,
Mhm.
and then accomplishing that goal. What did that open? What doors did that open for you next?
Yeah. So during the time that I was training for my marathon, I had met some friends, and one of them invited me to go to yoga with her. And in basically my whole life up until that point, I had just said I'm not flexible. That there's no way you can get me to touch my toes. I can't do yoga. It's too slow. I don't even want to do yoga. I'm more of a runner. It's just not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the story I had come up with, and I was really good at telling it to people. um, and she was like, just come to a class and see how it is. And I was like, I've kind of been wanting to get into yoga a little bit. I don't know, maybe I can do it. And so I went to a class, and it was hard. It was really hard. I was like, this is not that fun. I'm sweating. I feel like dying right now. And but after the class, I kind of felt more, I don't know, clarity. I felt a little bit like I was a little bit stretchier. So I kept going a couple times a week and got more familiar with the poses. And in the first class that I went to, I looked around and everyone knew what they were doing. And I was like, I have no idea what Warrior 2 is. What is that? And I would just look around and watch everyone else do this. And then they would do handstands and do headstands and back bends and all these crazy things. And I was like, I can never do that. But if you, I just kept going and kept practicing. And I found that the breathing that you focus on in yoga actually really helped my running. And so when I was running, I could feel a difference in how I was breathing and like that was huge. And I think that it actually helped me finish my marathon, honestly. But I continued going, and then on New Year's Eve, I was like, okay, I'm making the goal of going to yoga 3 times a week. And I started going 3 times a week. And then I saw an opportunity came up to sign up for 40 days straight of yoga. And I was like, oh God, that sounds just insane. How do I ever do that? And started the program, and it was through my yoga studio. And so it was 40 days of yoga, 40 days of meditation. This is all like during the same time. Yoga, meditation, healthy eating, and then like self-development. And it was also giving back to the community. So if you went a certain number of times and your team won, then they gave $100 to the charity of your choice, which is pretty awesome. And so throughout the program, I found that eating clean and meditating and doing yoga every day, and there were days that I missed certain things. Like there were days where I was like, my friends are going out for pizza today, and I haven't seen these friends in a long time, and I'm not going to not go just because I'm, not supposed to eat pizza. So I would still go and do things like that. And with yoga, it was actually really hard for me to miss my first day or miss a day of yoga. So I had made it so strict. I was like, I'm going to do all 40 days. And then on the first day when I was like, maybe I shouldn't do today, I had to almost like have this forgiveness of myself, which maybe wasn't the right way of looking at it now that I'm looking at it now. But I had this like idea that I had to complete the 40 days, but it gave me a sense of like self-forgiveness in a way. Like, yeah, I have these goals and I'm chasing after them, and I want to eat clean every day because it makes me feel good, and I want to do yoga every day because my mind is clearer, and I want to meditate every day because I see all these amazing benefits that come out of it. But there are days when it just doesn't happen, and that's okay. And so that self-forgiveness was huge actually for me to learn during that time period. And so now I'm continuing yoga about maybe 3 to 4 times a week still, but I am going to become a yoga instructor starting in September. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you share just like what has come out of all this personal development work in terms of your mission?
Yeah. Okay, so that actually really helped me develop my mission, the 40 days of yoga. And my mission is to basically just spark conversations that get people interested in and potentially trying things like yoga, things like eating healthy, things like reading a self-help book, even when they're like, I don't need any help, which is funny. I used to say that all the time. I'd be like, I don't need to read that. But basically sparking conversations that get people talking about it, and maybe like planting seeds to get people open to that idea. And even like getting people open to the idea of spirituality. And that was another thing that changed in the last year or so for me. But so that's one part of my mission. And another part is to give back to organizations through abundance, because sometimes when I look at like giving to a charity that I really care about, and I'm like, oh, well, $100 here is a lot. And yeah, it is a lot. It's significant. But at the same time, like if I look at it as like I have so many resources and I'm so lucky to have all these great things in my life, that I have the amazing opportunity to give to this organization and see it like in that way. That's been a big thing for me too. Yeah.
That's amazing. I just want to read a little bit the comments that have been coming in as you've been speaking.
Yeah.
I think Stephanie, I think this is in reference to your Big Four experience. She says, I know this all too well. This is how I started. Sorry you had the same experience. Leah, oh man, I can relate. And then Stephanie, congrats. And I think that was in reference to the marathon. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah, it's really amazing to see like what has come out of all this work that you're doing. And ladies who are watching, and hi, and just want to say hi again to everyone. Um, Let us know too what's coming up for you. I just love, Morgan, what you're sharing in terms of like sitting with the discomfort, doing something for the experience of it. Like I think when it comes to finding work that we're really connected to, we may not know what that is until we actually do it, right? So it's like we can have this idea and we can have this plan, but what I'm taking away from our conversation in terms of like you went and you tried yoga and you weren't even really open to it that much before. So being open to that possibility, doing it has now led you to your mission. It's so connected to that yoga experience. Can you share a little bit about the side hustle that you're launching?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So ever since I started, yeah, actually, okay. So I dated a guy during my master's program who had launched a business. And that is really what sparked my interest in starting a business of my own. And it's interesting how it's grown, because at first I was like, well, my plan is to work for 30 years and then retire and then live the good life, or whatever that was, you know?
Yeah.
um,
Which is so not the norm anymore. Like,
yeah, yeah. And it's funny when I go home and I talk to my mom, and she's like, that's just what people do, like did.
yeah. I actually say, I was like, I don't want to retire
I
ever.
know. Yeah,
Like,
I was telling my mom
yeah.
that. I was like, I don't want to retire. Like, I always want to do work that um, that fulfills me. You know, once I get to, yeah.
Yeah.
But so I'm sorry. What I got off track
We're
a little.
talking about your side hustle. And then I want to jump into imposter syndrome.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had always wanted to start a business since about 5 years ago. Um, I was never really at a point in my level of confidence in myself until the past year to believe that I could actually do it. So I would talk about it and be like, oh, well, I'm going to do this one day. And I would talk to friends and be like, well, why don't you just start that business? Like, you should just go do it. And it's like I wasn't taking my own advice. Like, I just needed to go do it. And so I started a business that is going to be making yoga inspired apparel. So it's going to be like printing inspirational quotes or yoga type quotes on t-shirts and shorts, headbands, yoga mats, etc. I launched that. Well, I didn't launch it yet. I'm still working on getting to the point of launching it. But I found someone to print the shirts. I found the kind of shirts I'm going to use. I found the company that's going to do my branding, and kind of everything is falling into place. And it's probably one of the scariest things I've done, which is it's having me it's forcing me to get over a lot of the roadblocks that are up in this crazy brain of mine, with that saying like you don't know anything about selling shirts to people. And that's so true. But the way that I'm looking at it is this is like deeply connected to my mission, because I plan on selling these at farmers markets and at places where I can actually get to talk to people about yoga and about getting outside and about being active and about meditation. And so anytime someone comes up to like look at a shirt, I get an opportunity to talk to them about like living an active lifestyle, and that's pretty awesome. And I'm going to be giving a portion of the proceeds to a charity. So it fulfills both parts of my mission really nicely. I'm pretty excited about it.
That's amazing. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
With that, and you hit on this a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned this in your interview. You said, even as I'm writing answers, I'm feeling imposter syndrome. So, can you talk a little bit? And I
Yeah.
feel like we've covered it too, just with sitting with that discomfort. But I'm wondering, like, maybe share how else imposter syndrome shows up for you, and then what you do to move through that.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to, in my mind, I knew what imposter syndrome meant, but I looked up the definition of it. I want to read it.
Yep.
Um, just when you Google, it says imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. Imposters suffer from chronic self-doubt with a sense of intellectual fraudulence that override any feelings of success or external proof of their competence. So basically, no matter how many signs they're seeing that point to the fact that they're awesome, like still feel like they're not awesome. Or like they don't deserve what they're seeing, or they're like, oh, I didn't do that by myself. Like these other people, and yeah, of course, other people are going to help, but
Like it's
basically,
not big enough. Like it's not good enough,
yeah,
right? Like that
yeah,
accomplishment. Yeah, I resonate with that a lot.
yeah. And so with that, I feel that a lot. I felt that a lot, especially beginning with the t-shirt or with the yoga apparel business, because I was like, oh, I'm not I'm not a business owner. Like, oh, kind of like shrinking away from it when I needed to be like, yes, I can do this, and but it's also terrifying sometimes asserting yourself and saying, yes, I am, rather than being like, well, I can sometimes be this way. Um, so yeah, I experienced it there. I've experienced it um, at work sometimes. I feel it. I and it's there are certain things that I do to kind of work through it.
Yeah,
Um,
share with us. What are those tools?
yeah. So one tool that I actually learned during the 40 days of yoga was to kind of notice these voices that are talking to you in your head, and these lies that are just like, oh, there's a lie, there's a lie, and just seeing them and personifying them and saying like, okay, that's okay. That I say like little Morgan, like this little Morgan is sitting right here in my head, and she's just like spouting lies, or like spouting things that are not like serving me at all. And I basically look at her and I say, okay, little tiny Morgan, thank you so much for helping me. Um, Maybe when I was a child and you were saving me from being humiliated by something, or you were saving me from, you know, being embarrassed. Thank you for saving me from that. That's really great. But you're not serving me right now. So let me take you, and I'm just going to put you on a shelf over here. And so that, like, it's always going to be there, but it's not serving you at this point, so just set it aside.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've been doing. And another is, I find that when I pray, like, I there's a lot of clarity that comes out of that. And when I study the Bible, and I actually have been doing a Bible study with my friend, and it, we it's called what is it called? The armor of God, and it's basically like, know the truth that you are able to defend yourself against the lies of the enemy. So, and I'm trying to think of how to say this in a way that's like across all religions. But so essentially for me, the way that I see it is like the enemy is saying these things like, you can't do it. This person doesn't like you. This person doesn't think you can do it. You should care about that. And like, you should seek your self-worth in things and how you look and all these lies that are just all roaming around. Like that's the enemy. And like praying helps see like what is the truth. And one of my really amazing friends, she told me a question. She was like, one thing that I think is, what is true right now? Like, what is the truth? What are the facts in this moment? And like the facts in this moment are, you know, we're sitting here, we're having this awesome conversation, able to talk about things that I love talking about, and life is pretty good. And sometimes like the facts might not be so awesome, but like praying about it and getting clear on like where to go from there, like that is, it's helped me quite a bit. So.
Yeah, and what you're sharing resonates so much because I think it doesn't even really matter like what your religion is. I think what you're talking about here, like the way I relate to it, is also like the intuition versus the ego, which is something I think about all the time. So it's like your intuition is like what gives you your truth, you know, and it's like your ego is like that voice in your head that's telling you you're not good enough. So I feel like that tool is so important and applicable no matter, I guess, like no matter what your views are on religion, right? And it gives you that grounding. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, and I think that prayer really just helps me ground myself, and so like self-reflection even as well also helps me ground myself, and like you were talking about meditation and just like building an awareness of the thoughts that are going through your head and saying like, is this thought serving me or is it hurting me and maybe even the people around me? Yeah.
I love it. Would love to hear, you know, what else is coming up for the ladies who are watching. I'm going to read one comment that Leah said because I think it's a good one. She said, learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it is definitely resonating with me. I know that I don't do this. I must learn how to practice doing so. Yeah.
Hard.
It's so hard.
It's not comfortable, obviously.
It's not comfortable. And it's also, for me, it's like realizing it's just not going to go away. You know, it's going to be there. And
even when you push through it and get to the next level, there's going to be a new level of discomfort.
Yeah.
And a new level of stuff to push through. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we're coming up on our time, and Morgan, you have a lot of traveling to do. So what I'd love to wrap this up with first would love to hear what questions do you guys have for Morgan? This is such a great time to connect with each other, whether, you know, because I know so like from all over, right? We have members who are in Texas, New York, California, even outside the US. So this is just a great opportunity to connect. So feel free to pop in any questions that come up for you, whether you're watching now or you're catching this later. But Morgan would love to, you know, just maybe wrap up with, for the women in our community who are going through challenging times or who are feeling really stuck with what they want to do with their work and with their lives, I guess maybe what is one or two pieces of advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I think first I would say kind of like what we were just talking about, like maybe sit in the discomfort a little bit longer than you think. Well, I'm just thinking about certain poses. When I sit in discomfort for longer than I think that I can, I end up learning more about the pose and about my body and about the situation than I would have if I had left the pose earlier. Mm-hmm. And when I look at my experience in the Big Four accounting firm, I stayed longer than I thought that I could handle. So there was that. But at some point, you get to you do realize that you need to make a change. And whether that change is having a conversation with someone in your current organization and saying like, listen, I'm feeling stuck. Like, was there a time when you felt stuck, or like what would you recommend doing? And just going with like a sense of inquiry and a sense of openness. And if there's not someone that you can talk to, maybe you can start an organization in your workplace that like is a support group, or even like a friend in the workplace that you can go to and you guys can chat about like how to make how to make your workplace a more positive experience. And if you're totally set on leaving your current workplace, I think kind of like the quote that I read earlier is, view the open space as an open as like a blank canvas, and see it as a sense of possibility rather than like running from your fears of hating your job. Like, does that make sense? And so seeing it as you're the artist to the canvas of your life, and that's so cliche, but
But
like
it's not. Yeah, it's opportunity.
Yeah, we really can build it how we want to. And once we get past the little stories that we tell ourselves, these underlying beliefs that are maybe not serving us, that's really when the world starts to open up and our possibilities start to come alive. So
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Morgan. Thank you so much, ladies who joined and you're watching live. This has been amazing. I'm so excited that we could chat a little bit. I know you've connected with a few members already, but I'll just wrap up with, mentioning three things. We're going to continue this conversation around confidence and imposter syndrome. Actually, here in New York, we're doing a coffee meetup next Friday, and we've opened the space to 10 women. Yeah, and we'll probably have meetups too in Texas, Morgan, at some point. So
great.
Yeah. And if anyone in the community is interested in hosting a meetup, please let me know, because we are bringing Work Bigger to other cities. We want to start sharing this content and community as much as possible. Hi, Deontay. So yeah, let me know if you're interested in hosting a meetup. We are hosting one in New York this coming Friday. It's a morning coffee, and I think there's a couple of spots left, so make sure you RSVP. But then, that's it. Just thank you again, everyone, for joining. And if you have any more questions for Morgan, what's the best way to connect with you? Is it through Facebook or LinkedIn?
Feel free to message me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and if you want to connect on Instagram, that's really what I use. I use Instagram the most. So
okay, I'll make sure to share it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you again, ladies. And I hope you all have an awesome weekend. And Morgan, safe travels. Have so much fun.
Thank you. It's been so good. Thanks for chatting.
Yay. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.